Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for having this hearing on an incredibly important issue. We have an epidemic in our country right now, and obviously I'm concerned by some of the testimony this morning because we hear from Ms. Maurer at a time at which we have a huge increase in opioid addiction and overdoses and deaths, that of the goals that were set out in the 2010 strategy, not a single one has been achieved. And Mr. Botticelli says, well, that's because we're not taking into account the increase in marijuana use. It's not other things. And one of the things you talked about was overdose deaths going from, instead of 15% reduction, to 27% increase. That's not marijuana, is it?
No, that's typically
Okay.
other drugs.
So, I mean, I think I understand from the administration point of view why you want to put a good face on it and say things are going great. They aren't going great. They're going terribly. And, you know, we do have, since March 10th, when CARA passed the United States Senate, we believe there are about 7,000 Americans who have died of an overdose. We spent a lot of time today talking about the Zika virus, which is a huge problem. I think one American has died so far. And I support more efforts on Zika, but my gosh, we have a crisis and an epidemic going on right now, and it's right in front of our eyes. And I was at another treatment center yesterday. You know, I appreciate what both of you do every day. I do, and I really appreciate your testimony at the Judiciary Committee where you talked about the need for CARA to provide a more comprehensive response. And, you know, I would just say everything we've talked about today, you know, is touched on in CARA. The House bill, I think, improves CARA with regard to the limitation on the number of patients that a buprenorphine doctor can handle. That's going to be part of the final conference report. On the increased number of beds, we kick it to GAO because we did not have a consensus on that, but you're going to be working on that issue, I hope, very soon. On naloxone, we, as you know, thanks to your help, we do a lot more on naloxone in terms of funding the grants, but also significantly we put some more contours around it to target it more and to encourage people to provide folks with treatment options, which, you know, when I go, as I did to one of our major drugstore pharmacy companies recently to talk about over-the-counter Narcan, I, of course, support that and strongly, but also support having a consultation so that the people who are getting this naloxone or Narcan to be able to help a loved one or a friend also know where the treatment centers are in the area and can get these people into treatment. The solution is not more Narcan alone. The treatment is Narcan to save lives, but getting people into treatment. So I appreciate both of you and what you do every day, but I think we have to have a little different attitude about this. It has to be a crisis mentality in order for us to do what needs to be done. And as you know, the House on Friday passed 18 different bills and put them into one bill, into the CARA legislation. We have our CARA legislation. The differences I have all put down here, and I'm happy to provide this to you today. We would love your help in getting us through this conference as quickly as possible because we can't wait. And there are people now talking about adding new elements to it that have to do with other important issues. We've got to focus on this issue of the opioid crisis that we face. So I would ask you today, are you willing to work with us as you did in the Judiciary Committee? And both of your testimonies were actually very helpful. And as you know, there are many groups, I think 130 groups at last count around the country who are with us on this to try to get through a process with the House and Senate where we take the best of both and be sure that we don't weaken the Senate bill. I know you care a lot about funding, so do I. But let's be honest, you know, we did increase the funding in the omnibus for this year. We've got to do it again for next year. The $82 million that's authorized every year going forward in additional funding in CARA has to be held and not taken from programs that may not have an authorization anymore but are appropriated every year. For instance, a drug monitoring program, I saw the House use that for some of their funding. That has to continue to be used for drug monitoring. So anyway, any thoughts on that,
Sure.
Director Botticelli?
So first of all, I really appreciated your leadership on this important issue and on CARA. And I think you know that many of the elements of CARA are very important to the administration here. I think we also understand, though, that this issue needs to be resourced. You know, as I travel the country, you know, in Ohio and other places, the biggest issue that I hear is people who want treatment who can't get it. And despite everything that we've done, I think in previous, and with the support of Congress, in increasing capacity, we still have too many people who who are not able to access treatment when they need it. And I think we need to not, work with Congress around additional funding for this issue, because it is a tremendously important issue. And, that we have, long waiting lists of people who can't get in. We have parts of the country that don't have a treatment program where people can't access. So, we know we need a comprehensive response to this, but it also really needs to include a robust increase in treatment funding in the United States.
Yeah, well, this is an authorization bill, and it does authorize additional funding, and then we need to, every year, of course, fight for that appropriation, and it's not just for 1 year, it's an authorization going forward. And the way these authorization bills work around here, once you get it authorized, it tends to continue, and so it's, $800 million, $820 million over 10 years of additional funding, and most of it does go in to treatment, not all of it. But it's for prevention. One of the things I want to fight for in conference is a prevention program, because I do think that's part of the answer, as Ms. Maurer talked about. So we need your help on this, because we can keep talking about how we want more of this or want more of that, and nothing's going to happen. And in our communities, we're going to continue to see families torn apart and communities devastated and people dying and people not being able to fulfill their purpose in life, their God-given purpose, and that's where we are now if we continue to disagree. So let's figure out how to come together. And again, you all were very constructive and helpful in the Judiciary Committee. I don't think we would have gotten a unanimous vote or a 94-1 vote in the floor of the Senate without your help.
Great.
And I appreciate that. But it has some, as I mentioned, those 4 items just that we've talked about today, they're all addressed in here. And of course, treatment is addressed. And the final thing I just want to say, my time is close to expiring probably. I can't really figure out this. This clock works. Okay. I really appreciate the additional emphasis on the demand side. As you know, I'm the author of the Drug-Free Communities Act, started my own coalition back home, and still very involved with that. We just had our 20th anniversary, by the way. But we've got to make that shift and continue to make it. So I don't disagree with my colleagues who talk about the need for us to have better border enforcement, of course. But I will just, I guess, stipulate that if it's not coming from Mexico, it's coming from your basement, and if it's not coming across the border, it's coming across on a ship. And as long as the demand is strong here, there will be ways that it will be filled, whether it's, return to methamphetamines, which we finally started to make progress on, or whether it's other drugs that can be produced by chemists. And by the way, that's the case with regard to fentanyl. It's a synthetic heroin. It's produced by chemists. So we've got to continue to focus on the prevention side and the treatment recovery side, and if we don't, we will never be able to turn the tide. So, Dr. Inamoto, do you have any thoughts?
I just want to express my absolute willingness to work with you on a package that moves forward, and I think emphasizing your point about also the prevention piece of CARA, making sure that we have robust prevention programming in this country with resources to match it, as well as the recovery support piece and the peer piece, which we know are very important to helping people achieve and maintain their recovery.
Yeah. Thank you.